isn't it?
Hello everybody, we finally just got here and it is Thursday again and we're the infant feeding team at the John Ratcliffe Hospital in Oxford, and this is our questions and answers for infant feeding, anything related to feeding your baby. So we've got about an hour session and you put your answers down there. Anything at all, so about breastfeeding, bottle feeding, giving formula, volumes, sleeping, weaning, anything else, Alex? Anything in between?
Yeah.
Anything you want, anything at all about your babies and feeding and nutrition. So do ask questions. We get lots of lovely questions every week and we love to hear from you all and answering the questions. So hopefully you'll continue to do the same again this week. We've had some lovely weather, haven't we? So hopefully you've been out and about and enjoying yourselves, but that goes along with babies waking up and being really unsettled and
not sleeping so well.
Not sleeping and a bit sticky, isn't it, when you've got them skin to skin. It all gets a bit overwhelmingly warm, doesn't it, because it's warm at the best of times. So I hope you've managed in those couple of days that we had. It's a bit better today, isn't it? And so we're not about questions about hospital visiting or scans or how to have a baby or anything like that. We can answer them, but we shouldn't be answering them because it's not our area, and there is Ask the Midwives, and I think Cotswold Birth Centre did a lovely session on Monday this week about I think it was about birth and asking questions
labour,
about labour. So but you know, all the different stages and things. So they do sessions, and also Wendy, our lovely consultant midwife, does sessions as well. So she perhaps will do it on Monday coming up. So save all your lovely questions for them, otherwise there won't be any questions for them to answer, will there, if you ask us them all. So please do put your questions in, and we will see what we can do and see what answers we've got for you. And if you're thinking a question, then ask it, because somebody else will probably be thinking it as well, and that's really helpful then, because people will be more confident to ask other questions, and the more silly the better. That's always good. Silly is always good.
I think we should do a shout out to the Abingdon Baby Cafe, which is opened again now, and it's doing a morning session now. So if anybody knows about the Abingdon Baby Cafe, have a look online, and they're running their sessions in the morning. But it's so lovely to think about them up and running again.
Is it drop-in?
Not just yet. No, I think they have to sign up to go before. So check the website. I think you have to say you're going. So and there may be restriction in numbers. I haven't checked, but so fantastic. Sue's been offered such a wonderful service for so many years. The Abingdon Baby Cafe has been running, for about 18, 19 years now. So it's doing absolutely brilliantly. Yeah.
Great things, isn't it? So, you know, there should be breastfeeding support local to you, and we always say that your go-to at the beginning of your breastfeeding journey is the way to get your help is firstly with your midwife. That's the most important access, and they are specialists in normal feeding, and they work with mums and babies from birth up to when they're discharged, up to about 27 days, but mostly it's about 10-15 days that you see your midwife for. So they're your go-to if you're struggling to breastfeed, and try and time your feeds with your visits. So if you're having a midwife come, she'll ring you up and say, when am I going to visit, or when's the best time. Think about when your baby needs feeding and use that time to help, because that's ideal for you to get somebody with you when your baby's hungry to get a good feed. And if you're near MLUs, they are also really supportive. So the ones local to you and where you are, you know where they are. There's several in Oxfordshire, 4 I think in the community. So Banbury, Chipping Norton, Wantage and Wallingford are in the peripheral. And then obviously the Spires, which I think the Blenheim team run from, so mums come back into the Spires on level 7 for their postnatal checks, and then the next level is your health visitor. When you're discharged from your midwife, they will be able to help you breastfeed, so access them. Don't wait for them to ring you, because they will come and see you at birth and then at 6 weeks, and that's quite a long wait if you've got breastfeeding problems. So ring them up and talk to them. If you've been discharged from the midwife, ring your health visitor up and ask for some breastfeeding support. And also the local support groups, which are absolutely fabulous. They're specialist breastfeeding areas. So we've talked about the Baby Cafe in Abingdon, but there's also Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support, and they are doing face-to-face as well. So they are definitely running 2 in the county, aren't they? I think in Donington doorstep off off Theophily Road, and also in Didcot. So there's two that you can access in the local areas as well. So make sure that you know how to access all those services, and ask somebody if you don't, because all of that is free. It's all free support. You don't have to pay for breastfeeding help. There's really good service in Oxfordshire. You shouldn't have to pay for extra breastfeeding help. You should be able to ask somebody. And then there's obviously the infant feeding team. If your midwife or health visitor suggests that you're having slightly more problems, or OBS says that they think that you ought to see us for a checkup, baby's not gaining enough weight, or not able to attach at the breast properly, you can't make it pain-free, then that's the thing that you'd come to see us. But we can't see you the same day, or quite often we can't see you the same week.
Yeah, we're booking a bit far in advance.
We are quite full and quite busy, because we're still on restricted clinics. We're doing one twice a week, which is jolly good, but we're not right up to what we were doing before lockdown because of capacity. So we have got a bit of a backlog. So we try and bring you forward if we can, but you need to know that you can get support in the areas that we've already talked about: your midwife, your health visitor, OBS, and they keep you going, and they give you support either by telephone or seeing you while you're waiting to see us, so that you've got help when you need it as soon as you can. I think even OBS is really busy, and they've got a bit of a backlog seeing people as well, because they haven't got full capacity and it's not drop-in anymore, it's all by appointment. So we're all doing our very best to make sure that you get a positive experience, but you have to contact people and ask for help. Nobody will come and find you if you're struggling. You have to go and ask for help, and everybody will help you if you ask for help. So make sure that you know where to get it, so you can access it when you need it. And the links are on our website, so the Oxford Foundation Trust Hospital site. OUH, yep. And you can access that, and it has got links to them, so you can email them or link onto their website, and you can see their details to contact and how and when they're running clinics. So you've got direct access to that as well. Anything else to add about that?
No, I think La Leche is another organisation that's there to support, and there's some fantastic resources online with organisations such as the Breastfeeding Network, which is fantastic.
Brilliant.
The Association of Breastfeeding Mothers, NCT as well, National Childbirth Trust, and then for those of you that are formula feeding or considering formula feeding and weaning, there's the First Steps Nutrition website, which is absolutely brilliant. It's aimed at parents as well as health professionals, and if you want an unbiased evidence-based resource about formula milks in the UK and weaning foods, then that's the place to go. It's called First Steps Nutrition, so do have a look.
So if you're not sure about formulas, it lists all of the formulas available in the UK and what's in them, and that's really helpful for parents to make decisions about what formulas they'd like to use, because we as healthcare professionals, we don't recommend anything. We just give you access to, give you the lead into that website for you to make the decision yourself. They're all the same, and several are more expensive than others, so but your baby will get the optimal nutrition from all of them. Otherwise they wouldn't be on the market. So don't feel the most expensive is the best always, but make yourself informed about what's available, and then you can make those choices yourself.
And it's first stage formula all the way through to a year. No need to swap to any of the others that are out there. There are actually loopholes in marketing in the UK, and to do with the breast milk substitute code, and it's a way that they can be marketed. So there isn't a need to go on to Hungrier Milk or Goodnight Milk or any of these. They actually is recommended by the Public Health England and the NHS to stay on first stage formula all the way for the first year. No need to swap at all. So and as Naomi said, nutritionally they are all the same. So you can buy the cheapest brand. It's a bit like buying generic paracetamol, and it will do just as good a job as maybe a named brand or something you may have seen advertised. So.
And you can get a holiday out of it if you don't buy the most expensive.
Or a meal out at least.
Or at least a meal out or two. Absolutely.
Anyway, You were going to talk about
oral satisfaction,
yeah,
weren't we?
exactly,
So
yeah.
we've been in clinic as usual this morning, and so we were yattering away to mums and babies, and one of the things that I think we've all talked about it today, haven't we, as having come together at the end of clinic, that we've had several conversations with mums about babies having their oral needs met. So we talk a lot about babies getting the food that they need, but it's at the end of the day, and it's not really written about in books and things about breastfeeding, but actually if babies can't use their mouth properly, their oral needs aren't often met. So if they're not on the breast deeply enough, or they're not having the breast at all, so they might be having bottles, they often search, and you find that after a feed and you think, oh, I've just given X amount, and they've had so much food and they're pooing and peeing and they're gaining lots of weight.
Might even be a bit sick.
Posting up, absolutely, and they're still doing it, and you think, why is this? He's not happy, and often it's that they're not quite getting that fullness in their mouth. They want a big mouthful of breast in their mouth, and their cheeks need to be filled, and the tongue needs, because the tongue is huge in a baby's mouth compared to the size of it, and that tongue needs to curl around that, lovely soft breast, and if they can't quite reach that attachment, they don't get that fulfilling feeling from their suckling, so they constantly search for it. And so babies that have had bottles often have dummies because their oral needs aren't always met, and they don't seem to be settling after they've had a bottle, even though they've had a lot of food. And it's not about the food always. It is about their oral satisfaction. It's lots of things. Breastfeeding is much more than food, and feeding a baby is much more than food. And it's part of their development and part of their oral needs. So it's recognising that, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about, we both have mothers in clinic today that we ended up talking to them about it. And I have mothers who are mixed feeding at the moment, starting with the breast, then going to the bottle, and finding the babies are constantly looking for more. So we chatted about maybe finishing the feed. Once you think the baby's had probably enough, try the baby back at the breast and see what happens. And quite often in that situation, the baby, as Naomi said, has had their oral needs met, and actually they love that closeness and comfort that being at the breast gives them. And then they'll actually settle and go to sleep, which is what you're looking for, really, isn't it? After the feed, you're hoping that they'll be calm and relaxed and be happy and not looking for more food. So this is what I discussed with these two mums today, was that actually we could try that after the feeds and see how that goes, because the babies are gaining really beautifully, don't need any more food than they're getting at the moment. So it's not a need for increased amounts of food, it's a need to meet the baby's needs for other things, as in oral satisfaction and that closeness and comfort that they get when they're at the breast with their mummy.
And their personality changes when they get a really good attachment. They just suddenly relax. And we've just seen a baby have a really nice feed, and actually it was with a nipple shield on. It wasn't a breastfeed, so it wasn't a perfect breastfeed. It was a perfect breastfeed for that baby, but it wasn't with all of those things. But it was the first one that he'd ever done really well, and he had both sides and went back on again and had some more, and he came off and he had a lovely pink nose and face, and he was hands back, lying just absolutely prostrate, and that says an awful lot. He hasn't been settled and he hasn't been happy. And the other baby I saw wasn't quite on and was doing lots of vomiting and posting up, and we changed the positioning, and he was very much more settled at the end of it, because he got a really good attachment and a big full mouth of breast, where his cheeks were really full, and he was doing really big deep suckling, which is what we look for in babies suckling and swallowing. And they were just much happier. So don't underestimate about the good attachment and how it impacts babies' feeding. Even if you've got low supply or you're just learning to do it, if just getting that extra bit of positioning and attachment and that deep suckling really meets the baby's needs at the core, and in a cerebral way, that their brain is tapped into, and they get their needs really met, so they settle more, and they tend to be happier babies and not searching. And when babies feed a lot at night and do all the cluster feeds and things, so they're not attached to the breast well, then they will keep searching and searching, and then it gives you feedback that you haven't got enough milk, you think, and that they're not doing very well, and that you can't settle a baby and you can't cope with all of it because you're not getting sleep. It's actually, you know, just tweaking positioning, and we go on about positional attachment all the time.
It's the key to most of it, really.
And don't underestimate how powerful it is, just tweaking your baby a couple of millimetres to actually improve their suckling needs and to make them settle more. And they do settle much more. So have a little think about that, and you know, if your baby's constantly searching, is it because they're not quite on the breast deeply enough? And get some help. Get somebody to support you or what you're feeding, positioning, just to see if that helps your baby settle more as well.
I'm amazed we've got no questions yet.
Ah.
So no questions from anyone today? No. Is it all going so well? Brilliant.
I've had a look on mine as well. I was having a quick sneak peek when you were talking, and I can't
might do a
see.
refresh because
I've
sometimes
got
they get hidden.
absolutely
Don't
no
they?
questions at all come through. So perhaps you're
Normally
just having a very quiet day. We didn't have as many people watching last week, so perhaps people are getting busier as we're starting to
Oh no, we have
normalise. Have you got one
We've
now?
got one.
Lovely.
Maria.
Thank you very much, Maria, starting us off.
Yeah.
It's just come up
Yeah.
on here as well.
So just from the drought. Hello, my baby is 13 weeks now. We have had a difficult time with feeding. Tongue tie divided twice. Oh, you pulled off.
Oh,
Still some restriction at the back of the tongue. And that makes it difficult to breastfeed or bottle feed. I've been mostly expressing, but was able to put him on the breast once a day thanks to help from your team. It's been 5 days that he has started to refuse the breast, cries and gets upset. I was wondering if there's any chance I could put him back on the breast even for a short feed once a day, or is he already settled with bottles? Thank you.
you could give him a bottle first and then breastfeed him.
Yeah.
If, you know, so that he doesn't associate it with hunger and not getting what he wants, and so give him his needs first and then give him a breastfeed afterwards. That might reassure him that it's okay to go to the breastfeed, as we've just talked about, for more than just food. And it might just help, because we know that good feeding is good physio for tongues, and you know, the more they can suckle at the breast, the more the tongue function can improve, and they can learn that it can be a positive place to be as well. So if you're really struggling, give him what he wants and then go on to the breast at the end of it to settle him, and then you could, once he's gained more confidence in the breast, then try and go back to it. And I'm assuming that you're doing things like, you know, the paced responsive feeding. So, you know, we do talk about this quite a lot, but your baby is very close to you when you're giving a bottle, so you're not feeding your baby away from you. Yeah,
Yes, we have.
we have there. So we don't want to sort of have babies away from you like that to feed. It's often, you know, you see staff doing that sometimes in hospitals and things, that shows. But actually, babies need the confidence to be close, so keep your baby close at all times when you're feeding, so they go from the breast to the bottle more happily, but also swap sides as well, so that you change the way that you're giving the bottle on both sides, so they get used to going on both sides of the breast as well. And just, I'm sure you're doing all of those things already, if you've been talking to lots of people to support you breastfeeding.
Been talk to us?
Yeah. You know, hopefully that's not what it is, but it just could be that it's flow, and as they, you know, because it's been a very difficult journey, and your baby's had tongue tie cut twice, they've had a lot of input in their mouth. It just might be a step too far, that they're not getting what they want from the breast as soon as they go on, and it's not a good latch for them immediately, because you've got attachment issues because of everything that you've gone through, which is really grueling. It's so tough for you, what you've been through. Give them food first, and then try the breastfeed when they're happy. Go have a bath and put them on the breast in the bath. If they're, you know, just snuggling and a little bit unsettled, then offer the breast at the end of the feed. You could offer a nipple shield as well if they're not attaching at the breast really well. That's not always the best answer, but it might be that it's their driver. If they're getting plastic in their mouth from a bottle that they go to the breast, it might be a step too far to go to the breast when they're getting used to a bottle, and that might help. But, you know, be aware that if you don't have masses and masses of milk, they get much less milk through a nipple shield. So making sure that they get the most, you know, the right amount of nutrition is really important. But trying to make it always positive, and that might help. The other thing that you could look at is a nursing supplemental system. If they're going to the breast, you put a little tube into the baby's mouth while it's at the breast, and so this goes onto your nipple. You may have, I don't know if we've done this with you or seen them, but sometimes pushing that and they get the flow from the bottle at the breast, and it just sits, just sits on the breast here like that, on the nipple, and the baby goes onto the breast, and then the baby suckles and gets this up from the bottle. And sometimes that gives them the flow that they're looking for if they're not transferring milk very well, and sometimes that gets babies back onto the breast and transitions back if they're having lots of bottles. But make it a positive, always make it a happy place, don't make it a trial. So any time that your baby is struggling, always give him the default that makes him happy, and if that means that they have a bottle, then make sure you give that as a positive and that he gets lots of food. So always reward him. Try for a couple of seconds at the breast, and if he gets really cross, go to the bottle and give him a bottle, give him a present, and then go back and try it another time. But try it maybe when he's very sleepy, so that he's in like a dream feed, and they may feed. Do you find that if you give it at night, breast at night, he feeds better than if he's in the daytime? Sometimes that makes them much less stressed if they're sort of semi-awake, and you know, go back to it after a bottle, and see if he copes with that, so that it's always a positive and he's always having a nice time. I hope that answers your questions. Really tough. If you want to talk through some things with us on the phone, do ring us. We can't see you at 13 weeks, I'm afraid, but we can talk to you if you want to talk to us on the telephone and talk through a few of your concerns. You got anything to add?
No, I think you've covered it all. That's fab. Yeah, so Maria obviously has been in touch with us because I recognise her name.
Yeah.
I think Elise has been helping her. So thank you.
It's really tough. Really, really tough.
Maya has said, hi, pregnant with second baby. First baby had a tongue tie which really affected breastfeeding, along with an epidural headache which ended in me giving up on bottle feeding.
It's really tough, really tough.
Chose not to have baby's tongue tie snip last time. I chickened out at the appointment, but really want to pursue breastfeeding this time. Is second baby more likely to have tongue tie as a first baby did?
Might do, might not.
Yeah, we do see it, but it can be familial link, can't it? But not always. So I think it's just going to have to wait and see.
You see lots of babies that don't have tongue ties second time round, and lots of babies that do. So it's just what it is. I think probably give us a shout when you've had your baby and you're in the ward, and if you want to talk to us, you know, ask to see the infant feeding team and say you had a really awful time last time, and you know, maybe we can come up and just have a little check of feeding when you've had your baby. So you know, let us know when you're on the ward, and just ask to be seen by us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay, Maya, hope that helps. Charlotte's come on, our lovely Charlotte. She's, hi ladies, hope you're both well, and we're down in Devon with my mum. I hope she's looking after you and giving you lots of love,
Lots
Charlotte.
of cake.
Yeah, and
Fresh air.
yeah. So, right, Rachel has said, is breastfeeding well for the first time something that tends to happen quite instinctively for most women, or should I expect there to be challenges and ensure I'm prepared? I find it hard to know how much, if I should prepare as a first-time mum. I think it's remembering it's a learnt skill is the first thing to remember. Whilst there is an element of instinctiveness about it, and it is natural, it doesn't come naturally. So, you know, make the most of videos and pictures that you can see. We've done some, you can go have a look at them. If you look for them on Google, you can go OUH, maternity, feeding, and you'll find our webpage, and we've got a link to our videos. Things like Global Health Media are absolutely brilliant. They give you a really good idea of what a baby is capable of when they're born. There's a whole series of videos made by them.
It's a great app that they've got.
Yeah, and you look under the breastfeeding section, and you'll see some fabulous pictures and films of babies. And there's a little video called Breastfeeding in the First Hours, which gives you a great idea of what babies will do, regardless of where they're born, all over the world. They go through the same process. So keeping your baby skin to skin will bring out their instinctive breast seeking and breastfeeding behaviour, not dressing them, not handing them over, not having them have their obs done, and waiting until after they've been fed for a wait. So no rush for those things. So having a baby, skin to skin from the moment they're born until they're fed gives you the best chance possible of it going well.
And it also, the skin to skin primes your milk production. And so we know that early skin to skin ensures that you make more milk. And we know that babies that have cesareans and things don't make the same, in the early days, don't make the same volumes of milk. And we see babies coming back into hospital on day 5 with much bigger weight losses than babies that have had, say, water birth at home, where it's been much less busy. But it's not just about the process and the procedure, it's often about how you feel afterwards. And lack of understanding about what you should be doing and how important it is. And I think don't underestimate that early skin to skin. That first hour, which we call the golden hour, is the one that really hacks up your hormone levels to a level which starts that production off. And then the feed in the same hour then even accentuates that even further to make more milk. And so you will feel rubbish, you will feel shaky, you will feel cold, you will feel that you're numb right up to here, and that overwhelmed with somebody rummaging inside your tummy as you're having had your cesarean is a most peculiar feeling. And some mums feel quite sick because their blood pressure drops a little bit, it's not a natural place to put a baby close to you when you're feeling like you're going to drop your baby. So you've got to be quite disciplined in yourself to say, actually, I'm going to go through all of that. No matter how I feel, I have got to do skin to skin with my baby for really early on in that postnatal time, within the first few minutes. And they will offer you your baby and take the blankets off and take your blankets off and wrap yourself up and keep your baby right up here close to you, because that will really give you a big surge of hormones to start milk production. And you just can't underestimate, if you miss that, how it impacts your milk production. We nearly always have mums and babies coming back that have had instrumental or operational cesarean deliveries. So that's the most important thing, that whatever the outcome, the skin to skin is the priming. Yeah. And the other thing is that babies don't feed very often in the first 24 to 48 hours. It's not about food, it's about getting used to being born for these babies. And they've got little supplies of fat cells around their back, of their neck, called brown cells. And they provide nutrition for babies. They provide something called ketogenesis, which is burning fat, which as adults we shouldn't be doing, and it's what diabetics do if they don't get enough calories and they start becoming ketotic. But babies do it in the first 2 days to feed their brains. So if they don't get many calories, they feed their brains whatever happens. So it's not about food in the early days, it's about babies adapting to being outside of your womb. And so often you think, oh, well, I'll go to sleep because I'm exhausted and I've had major surgery. But actually what you should be doing is expressing. So if your baby's sleepy, you should be expressing your breast by hand at least 8 times in that first day. So day 0, you should be hand expressing in the 24 hours. 8 times every day minimum is what we suggest that you do to prime your breasts to make milk. And if you get on with that, you do skin to skin and prime your breasts, you make milk. And when you've got milk and your baby's not feeding, you can do anything. You can feed your baby. If your baby's not feeding and you don't stimulate your breasts and you don't make milk, you can't do anything. You end up being readmitted to hospital with a baby that's lost more weight than you wanted, or they're jaundiced. Sometimes they're jaundiced and they get lots of food, but it's less likely if they're dehydrated that they're not jaundiced. So these are the things that you need to understand when you're coming into breastfeeding that will set you up for good breastfeeding 2 weeks later. And you've got a little window of about 2 weeks where that's where you prime and plug in all your prolactin receptors in your breast, and it's like plugging something in and switching it on. If you don't do that, it doesn't work. So yes, your body will make milk even if you don't do it, but it won't keep making it if you don't do it. So it doesn't set that process in place to make lots and lots and lots for a long time in feeding. It's your calibration period. So if you don't do any calibration, you don't get it.
We say milk supply is driven by milk removal. So the more you remove, the more you get.
Yeah. So it's understanding that as a mum before you go into it, because in the middle of it all, if you've had, if you're exhausted after your delivery, the last thing you want to do is have to look after somebody else, and the little tiny person that can't help themselves is your baby, and that's your job. And so you're overwhelmed with fatigue. You may not have slept for 3 days. You've been in early labour, and then you go into hospital, and then you have your labour, and then it's morning and you still haven't, it's not night time to have a sleep. Your baby and you're tired, but you still have to do it, because if you don't, you can't catch up later. You can't turn the clock back with breastfeeding. If it's not done, it doesn't happen. So it sounds really terrible when we're saying it like this, and it sounds really daunting, but actually if you don't do it, it doesn't happen. So it's understanding that and realising that if you don't switch everything on in the early days, it won't happen. And protecting your milk supply is probably the most important thing that you do as a mum when you have your baby, and then everything else will fall into place. So those things are really important for preparation, and I think also maybe learning how to hand express before you have your baby is probably another useful skill that you can have. You don't necessarily have to collect your colostrum, which you might have read as colostrum harvesting. You can learn to hand express. So if you're getting up towards about 36 weeks, your midwife can give you some syringes at your appointment, and she can talk you through how to hand express at the same time. And then you can go home and have a little practice, because when you come in, you will have the skill, and that makes life really easy for you once you've learnt that. If you're not sore, and if you have had an instrumental delivery, then you might have a drip in your hand, and it might be more difficult to learn to use your hands and do hand expressing if you've never tried it before. And managing a syringe to collect it, which is what some mums use to collect. So get some syringes, get the midwife to show you how to do some hand expressing, and ask for help in every corner. So when you've had your baby, ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
There's also our video as well, which we filmed with a fabulous mum who allowed us to film her doing hand expressing. She did a wonderful job. Her milk was transitional, so it was beginning to drip rather than just collect in droplets. But it's well worth having a look at that if you want to see what hand expressing is like and how a mum can collect her own milk. And Rachel, I see you've come back already. She said, that's super helpful, thank you. Could I ask how often babies usually want to feed within the first 2 days? Well, in the first 24 hours, the baby may look to feed only 3 times, but that's only acceptable if the baby is healthy and term. Yeah. So a good weight, born at 37 weeks plus, with no concerns at all, we will let a baby feed only merely 3 times. That's all they may be looking for. If a baby is born a bit early, or they are the baby of a diabetic mother, or they are a bit lighter than we would like, then those babies will be encouraged to feed every 3 hours minimum. So we don't want them to go more than 3 hours, but they can feed more frequently 3 hours. So you'd be looking at 8 feeds in 24 hours in that instance.
Minimum.
So in those first days, that healthy term infant might only have 3 feeds in the first 24 hours, and in the second 24 hours may only have 5 feeds, and by the time they get to the third 24 hours, we're looking at a minimum of 8 feeds thereafter. And they won't necessarily be evenly spaced. They're much more likely to have some close together and some further apart. So, that's absolutely acceptable as long as that baby is healthy in term.
8 to 13, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely,
normal.
minimum of 8. Yeah. So going from there, so 3 in the first 24 hours, 5 in the second 24 hours, minimum 8 thereafter go forward, and that doesn't change, and that's morning and night.
And that's quite a long time, and they will grow horns at night.
Yeah,
so
they do.
You'll find in the first couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, that your baby sleeps a lot in the day and wakes up all night and feeds all night.
That's
and they're driving the milk with the prolactin levels and things to prime the milk supply, and it's what babies do. So they're much more alert in the nighttime hours than they are in the daytime hours initially. And so you've got to be prepared for that, and you can't do day and night duty without sleeping. So you have got to then go to bed in the day and have a proper sleep when your baby's resting. Get somebody to look after your baby so that you can manage that night feeding. and keep going, because that's the thing that will drive your milk, your baby feeding lots and lots in those early days. And getting the positioning right is the other thing if they're feeding a lot, because you get sore. If you don't get it right, you get sore, and then that makes it really difficult. So it's about getting really good position and attachment. Look at the videos that we've talked about, look at the access to the support groups that we've talked about, and where to get the early help, because all of that will help you have a successful breastfeeding journey, which is what we all want, including us, and not just yourselves, because we want you to have a positive experience. So ask for help.
Yeah. So Charlotte has put a message out saying that Alicia's very cuddly at the moment. I think she is, and I think it's rather lovely cuddling her too, Charlotte.
Skin to skin for life, isn't it?
She's waving at us both when we're back. Right. Well, no more questions. Very quiet today, ladies and gents. So,
is it the rain? Is it the rain? I don't know. People are getting out and about, and school's on again, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's all a bit
that
strange.
might make a difference. People will be standing at the school gates at the moment.
So we can talk about, we talked about where to get help, but just we did start doing this last week, but we can do it again, just talking about the care plan, because this is what you're going to take back with you when you leave hospital, and that's got all the numbers that you might need. We talked about that last week, and that's on there, and finding the help that you need. And it has your details of your birth in it as well. If you're not sure about what time your baby was born, or the weight or anything, it's all written on the next page. And then the midwives write on here the record of your checks and your baby's checks, and they put the birth weight on there, and poos and wees and things like that. And then you go to this page, which is the one with red writing on, and that says congratulations on the birth of your baby. So that means that it's for you to write in. So take a pen into hospital so that you can record your type of feed and when your baby fed, or if you're using express colostrum or you're giving bottles, you can write down when you gave it and how much your baby had, and what sort of wee and poo it's done. And so when somebody asks you a question, when did you last feed your baby, you don't have to think, I haven't got a clue. You just write it down when you do it, and then you don't have to remember it. And so that's quite helpful for you to log what's happening. And it's got a thing about how your baby's feeding. Is it just licking and not making any effort? Is it going on but not staying on? Or is it feeding really well? And so you can read that and see how it is. And then on the next page, we've got a blank pages, and that's for us to write plans in. So if you're not quite feeding well, if it's not going really well, your midwife should write a plan on there for the next person to come in and see. So if you're getting a different midwife caring for you, she can read about what was put in place. But also if you come into hospital, we can read about what's been done with your community midwives at home, or if you've been in hospital and you go home, the community midwives can see what's been done in the hospital as well, and who you've seen. But at the same time, just at the top there are our telephone numbers and details. So there's contact details to contact the infant feeding team if you want it, with our email address as well. So you can contact us by telephone or by email to get an appointment or to have a conversation with us, and how to get hold of us. So and also for the Horton, if you need the support at the Horton as well. So the numbers are all here, everything is here. And then on this page we've got what we call 4 reliable signs of milk transfer, and you may have heard us talking about these several times, but this tells us how your baby's doing. And there's like a little traffic light system here with green and amber. And so if you're ticking the questions they ask, this is the first 72 hours of your baby's life, and then it should be done at least twice between 72 hours and day 5, checking to see how your baby is doing. And you should be doing these as parents as well. It's not just for the midwives to look at, but they will look at it and they will ask things like, is your baby peeing, and how many times is it peeing? Is your baby pooing? Is it changing colour? Is your baby suckling and swallowing? And you know, how many feeds is it having in a day? I'm just looking to see what it says. And
shape of the nipple.
What it looks like when it comes off, and you know, how your baby's behaving. And if you're ticking all the green boxes on here, then you're onto a winner. You're doing really well. But if you're ticking more of these, you need to be, if your midwife's doing it and ticking it, she needs to find out what's going on and watch your feed. And if it's you doing it, you need to be calling your midwife and asking her to watch your feed, or to get some help, or to ask some questions about what's going on. because actually baby suck swallow is the first of the reliable signs, and it's how your baby transfers the milk. So you're looking at really good suckling and swallowing activities.
Can I just make a comment? Leanne, the answer to your question is, can I see your question? No. And you asked, can you reset? Should you resend it? Yes, please. Can't find your question. I've been up and down and refreshed and refreshed. Leanne, please put your question
going
through.
on with it today.
Yeah.
Sometimes happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, I've refreshed and refreshed. I can't see it. So yeah, please, Leanne, resend your question. And if anybody out there is thinking I haven't answered their question, please send it through again, because I got another comment from Charlotte saying hope we're both well, and saying talking about the chats. But apart from that, we've covered them all. So if you think you sent us a question and we haven't answered it, please resend it, because I can't see it.
So do I go back to the 4 reliable signs? Should I have a little look at that again?
Yeah, because I haven't come through yet.
Got no questions, okay.
No.
So the first reliable sign is how your baby's suckling and swallowing, and the pattern should be really rhythmical, deep suckling. So if your baby's nibble, 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 it's not going to be transferring milk. It's what we call non-nutritive feeding. So actually, if you look at the feeding, you can see your baby go onto the breast, and then they do an actual really deep suck swallow, and their jaw is right underneath in the breast, going right underneath and drawing the milk, and you hear every suckle or every suckle or every other suckle, you hear a k, k noise, very, very gentle, quiet noise, and that's the swallowing. So you need to be listening out for those things. You know, don't keep the radio up really loud if you're not sure. You know, turn it down and have a little listen, because it's very subtle. You may not hear it, and that tells you if your baby's getting enough food. So if it's nibble, nibble, nibble with none of the k, k, k noises, you should be, you know, looking at your supply and getting somebody to check your feeding. So that's the first reliable sign, suckling and swallowing. So if your baby's not doing that, the next sign will happen, which is your baby starts peeing less. And so peas are, they should pee at least, once you've got milk, 6 times a day. But day 1 it should be 1 pea, day 2 2 peas, etc. 3, going up to day 5 where it should be about 6 peas a day. And if your baby's not peeing that much, then you need to look at your baby's suckling and swallowing, and just looking at the attachment and seeing if you've got milk and getting somebody to check for you. And then pooing, and if they don't suckle and swallow and they don't pee, there won't be poo. And we know that babies that aren't getting enough milk on day 3 won't poo on day 3 or 4, and so that shouldn't happen. Babies should poo every day. You know, babies don't get constipated if they're breastfed. They should poo at least 2 peas, £2 coin sized peas a day.
Like that.
Yep, we've got a little chart with
No, I couldn't find it earlier. Is it there? Oh yes.
Here it is. So it's looking at our peas and poos, and so they should be £2 coin, but dark, going to browny green to yellow. And by day 4, 5, your baby's poo should be yellow, and there should be 2 of them every day. That's the minimum. So most people say, oh, mine did about 10 a day, but that's quite normal. And the colostrum that you give your baby in the early days will make your baby poo. It's a laxative. But if they don't do the suckling and swallowing, they won't be pooing. And the last reliable sign is weight. So if your baby's not gaining weight, you will have noticed that it's probably not suckling and swallowing. It won't be doing much pee, and it certainly won't be pooing if it's lost more than 10% on day 5. So if your baby isn't pooing on day 3 or 4, you need to be calling your midwife before you get to day 5, so that we can get a plan in place and get you protecting your milk supply and giving your baby more food if you need to, so that we stop that from happening and stop your baby coming back into hospital by day 5. So look at the picture every day, think about your care plan, look at the questions, look at them twice a day if you want to, just say right, Wallingford and at Banbury 24 hours a day. So even if you don't live in those areas, the numbers are on the front of your care plan, and you can always ask those questions at 2 o'clock in the morning if you're concerned. So there is always somebody that you can ask a question to and not leave it. and you know, they can support you remotely if that's what you need. But those are the 4 reliable signs that you really need to get on top of from day 0, so that you protect your milk supply and you keep your baby getting enough food and understanding. We're getting some internet problems, aren't we?
Yeah, I've got another question come through, but I haven't seen Leanne's come through yet. So not sure what's happened there. Anyway, Buzz has said, do we need to carry formula milk in a hospital bag in case I don't produce milk after delivery? The answer to that is no. First and foremost, if you are struggling, we will help you with expressing if your baby's not attaching. If that doesn't have the desired effect, then we will support you with donated breast milk, which we've talked about on here before. Donated breast milk comes from our fabulous mums in this trust all around the county who donate their milk because they've got more than they need for their babies. They've been checked like you were checked when you had all your bloods taken up. It's a booking appointment, so they're checked for syphilis and HIV and HTLV and all those things that we might be concerned about. And assuming those are all negative, they're asked about the medications they take, and they're checked about their diets to make sure they fit what we're looking for, and then their milk comes in and it's pasteurised and made ready to use. So we're very lucky to have donated. We think we're the only trust that has a milk bank on site and that provides our mothers on the ward with donated milk to prevent us having to give formula. So then, should you decide that you didn't want to give donated, we also stock 3 different formulas. And as we mentioned earlier, all the formula milks have to meet government requirements, and so they're pretty much all the same, but they vary in price greatly. So no, you don't need to bring anything in with you. We have everything you need to help you.
And you know, remember that the mums that have given you the donated breast milk have been pumping 8 times a day to give it to you, and so if you receive it, we expect you to be pumping to match it.
Absolutely.
So you know, if your supply is a little bit low, it doesn't just get given to you and you can just keep giving it. We expect that you're on a breast pump and working on your supply really hard to protect yours and to get your supply built up while you're waiting. You know, and if your baby's in the hospital not quite getting enough milk. Because it is a real gift. We're very lucky, and it is a real gift. And other hospitals would give formula if you were readmitted or your baby wasn't quite getting enough food. And so we are really protecting that exclusivity. But it is a gift from the other women who are pumping and working really hard to give it back. And lots of mums give it back if they've received it on the ward. They come along and they do some pumping and give a little bit back to the milk bank in return when they get home and they've got their supply up and running. So it's very reciprocal.
And whilst it's fantastic, and donated breast milk would always be our next choice after a mother's own milk, it's remembering that your milk is bespoke for your baby. It's totally and utterly tailor-made. Every bug you've ever had in all your life, the antibodies for those are there. It has enzymes, it has antibacterials, it has antivirals, it has all sorts in it that are specific to you. So your baby's, it's like protecting your baby in a very special way, in a way that someone else's milk doesn't. What someone else's milk does is ensure that your baby is not given the protein of another species, so it keeps it human milk exclusive is how we put it. So there are real reasons why we like to use donated breast milk, but first and foremost it would be your milk.
And we know that if you give triggers from other species milk, it can trigger allergies in babies. And so if you've got a very allergenic family, so if you've got people with eczema and asthma and allergies to cow's milk protein and or nuts or fish or anything like that, there's a strong history of allergies in the family, then exposure to non-species specific, so that would be cow's milk protein, can sometimes trigger these allergies, as can some of the fats that they put into the formula production, which can have some allergies to nuts and fish. So it's about looking at what your history is and making that informed choice if you're giving it, because it's a life-saving thing. But if there is strong family history of or something like bowel disease, so you get inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's, you know, the ulcerative colitis, things like that, you might find, or celiac disease. Any of those triggers can be created by cow's milk proteins. So, you know, it's about looking at the whole picture and minimising that exposure in the early days to your baby, so that you can protect your baby from reducing. It won't necessarily guarantee that your baby won't develop those allergies, but you can reduce the risk further if you protect your baby's gut in the early days to exposure to some of those proteins in the formula milks. So it's understanding all of those things as you go into feeding your baby and making an informed choice about what you want to give your baby. There's no rules in breastfeeding or formula feeding. It's your choice entirely. But if you understand all of it, then you can make an informed choice. And I think that's the most important thing, that, you know, we support mums in every form of feeding in this hospital. But it's actually making sure that you get informed choice. So if you want to talk more about it, discuss it with your midwife at your antenatal appointments, or talk about it with your midwife in the hospital when you've had your baby. If you want to have a discussion about it or want to find out more. And certainly First Steps Nutrition gives lots of information about things like that. But you know, it's understanding exposures to babies in the early days can trigger desensitizations to you know, their health later on. And one of those is diabetes as well, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, you really increase the risk of a baby going on to develop diabetes if it's got if the baby has a mother with diabetes,
increased risk.
And that baby's given formula milk, which is why we will always encourage mothers who've got diabetes to hand express, and we talked about this last week actually, to hand express before they've had their baby, so they've got some colostrum, because their baby will have their blood sugars checked at birth and for the next few feeds, and if that blood sugar drops, additional food needs to be given. Mothers will be encouraged to express, they'll be encouraged to feed, and additional food is probably going to be requested. And as a result of that, if we then give that baby formula milk, we increase the risk of that baby going on to develop diabetes, which is really not what we want.
It's type 1 diabetes we're talking about, with this more the risk of the, you know, if there's a family history. But it's significant, and that's why we're employed, because you know, we support mums in all aspects of feeding, but it's about informed choice and getting the information out that you can make decisions yourself as parents about how you want to feed your babies, and understanding of all of the things that goes around all of the decisions you make.
Right, Rachel's come back with another question. She has said, in the first 24 hours, how will I know if baby's hungry and that I should breastfeed? Will I only be discharged if they're happy baby's feeding? So much of my focus is on the birth itself and preparing for that, but I'm not very prepared for breastfeeding yet. And that's you and everyone else,
You're
Rachel.
not on your own.
That's everyone. Most women cannot see beyond the birth,
tunnel,
which is why these sessions have been set up, because so many people have not had the opportunity to have those discussions. And it's, you know, it's difficult to think about something beyond the birth when you haven't been through birth before. So, you know, it is like a great big hurdle to get through. So you're not on your own. But access the information that we're talking about. You know, look at things like Breastfeeding Network and Association of Breastfeeding Mothers. Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support do some antenatal sessions. Worth having a look on their website to see if they've got any coming up, because they're really helpful. But talking about the feeding, we will endeavour to make sure you are able to feed your baby before you leave. Sometimes feeding your baby counts as being able to hand express, because we've talked about supply already today. And sometimes actually being able to feed your baby your expressed breast milk, because your baby is struggling to attach for one reason or another, that would count as being okay to go home if you can feed your baby. And then we've got time to work on getting the baby to breastfeed. So it sometimes takes babies a little bit of time. But think about what we said about the skin to skin. Doing that early skin to skin makes the biggest difference you can make.
You can't underestimate that.
Get it on your birth plan. It is not airy-fairy, it is not fluffy. It is absolutely categoric and researched that early skin to skin makes all the difference. So get your baby skin to skin, don't let go of them, keep them there until they've breastfed, and then they can go off and be weighed, they can go off and have a cuddle with their partner, your partner, or whatever. But keep your baby skin to skin.
And that's not just breastfeeding, it's
No.
any baby that's born. So
Any.
every baby that's born should do it irrespective of feeding. So it, you know, that skin to skin decides how your baby's health is for the next 75 years. So it's about transferring bacteria and getting your baby to transfer their microbiome and start the process of bacterial transference in the baby's gut and onto their skin flora, so that they start to get protection for heart disease, obesity, health for cancers and things like that. You know, just starting that protection in the gut from just exposure to the mother and father's bacteria, not somebody else's. So
Like us.
keeping
Like
your
one of us
not the
touching your
staff,
baby.
yeah. It's your skin bacteria, and that's your flora that your baby has for health, for life, and that starts the process of your baby, you know, colonizing and surviving in a world full of you know, pathogens. And that's not, you know, that's every baby, whether you're giving formula or whether you're giving breastfeeding. And obviously every drop of colostrum you give is a bonus to your baby in the early days and feed, but you know, if you've chosen not to do that, it's so important to do the skin to skin as well. Your baby still needs to have that closeness for brain growth and to prime your baby to wake up to feed, and to transfer warmth to your baby, and you know, to make them just realise that they've been born. So it's really important that everybody offers their baby skin to skin if they want to, in the very early hours.
Ideally feed, you know, even if you've chosen to bottle feed your baby, to do that skin, that's in skin to skin. So the first feed should always be in skin to skin, whether it's a breastfeed or a bottle feed.
And you know, pace it and do it responsibly, so your baby's close to you all the time. That's where your baby expects to be, and doesn't matter how you're feeding, that's where it expects to be. So keeping it close, and also if you are giving bottles to your baby, whether you're giving breast milk in a bottle or formula, limit the number of people that are giving you your bottle, so that you don't pass your baby around the room to have feed. Just have, you know, 1, 2, 3 people that are the key players in your baby's life during the feeds, and then everything else after that is, you know, outside of feeding, so that they recognise that you are the key feeders in their lives, and that makes life much easier for them. They get used to being fed in a certain way.
This is playing up today. I saw some more questions come up. Louise had put some up. Let me just see. Oh, what is going on today? 15 comments, it says there. Bear with me. I know that there was a couple more comments came through, and they're not now.
And there are lots and lots of videos that you can have about, you know, pace feeding, but they are back, and we talk about going back onto our website as baby friendly do things, and we have got a little video session on how to do paced feeding, as well as using a pump, expressing if you're struggling to attach your baby at the breast and you want to know how to protect your milk supply, and how to use your breast pump. We've got it's Alex and I, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, we're on that one.
Showing you how to use a breast pump, so you might find that helpful if you want to refer to that, just to see how to maximise your milk supply and get the most out of your pumping. We've got information on what's in a nappy, and that's real life nappies that I've done in showing different coloured poos. So that's all edible in the nappies. So we had fun doing that, but it shows you what baby's poo looks like, and it's quite realistic. So, you know, recognising what your baby should be doing in the early days, and certainly in the first 5 days, looking at whether, you know, your baby's getting enough food or not. There's a little bit of stuff on that, and also on skin to skin, and also on building your baby's brain, because we know that the more you cuddle your baby, the more you'll make your baby's brain cells grow. So
I know that there were 2 other questions up there, and they seem to have disappeared. One of them, and they're both from the same lady, one of them said, can you go into labour without your waters breaking? And the answer to that is yes. In fact, babies can be born in the sac.
Supposed to be lucky, and they're not supposed to drown.
Exactly. Nobody's been born in the corn, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yes, you can go into labour, and babies can be born still encased in their sac. So, and sometimes what we will do here in the hospital is in order to, if we need to speed your labour up a little bit, if things need a little bit of helping along, we might break your waters for you, because we can see there are what we call bulging membranes. That's where the sac of waters is bulging at the cervix. We might do that. So yes, you can do. And the other question that person asked, but I can't see it anymore, but I happen to have read it before it disappeared, was that you weren't leaking, and you were worried that was a concern. It's not at all. I had a lovely conversation with one of the mummies at breastfeeding clinic today about how different everybody is. So some women will leak lots before, and some women will not leak at all. Some women will leak when they've had their babies, and others will not leak at all. Some women feel their letdowns, and some women feel them as quite pleasant, unpleasant, totally awful. But some people don't feel their letdowns at all. So it's a total spectrum. So whether you leak or don't leak, whether you feel your letdown or don't feel your letdown, has no impact on your ability to feed your baby.
And whether you leak in your pregnancy as well is the other thing with colostrum, because colostrum starts to develop from 16 weeks of pregnancy.
Yeah, really
so some mums find that they've got sticky goop on their nighties in the morning, and certainly as you go on in the pregnancy, some mums find that they leak. But if you don't, that's also normal. Doesn't mean that you're not going to produce milk. So, there's a variation on a theme here. You don't have to do any of them. There aren't rules in any of these things. So if your friend says, well, I'm leaking loads, whatever, and you're not, don't panic and think that it's abnormal that you're not, because lots and lots and lots of mums don't actually leak before. And some mums that do antenatal hand expressing can't get anything from their breast when they're hand expressing. And if you know your technique is really good and you've talked to your midwife about it and you still don't worry. No. It doesn't mean that you're not going to produce milk. It really doesn't mean that. And also sometimes in the very early days when you hand express, when you've had your baby, some mums really struggle to get colostrum out, but actually it doesn't mean that you're not going to produce milk necessarily. It just might be that you're very stressed and very tense and you're not allowing colostrum to come, but also your baby, if it suckles at the breast, may well get it. We don't know how much your baby gets when it suckles at the breast in the early days. It might be tiny, tiny drops or not a lot, but they start to that stimulation, and it goes back to the first 24 to 48 hours not being about food. It's about adapting to being born and you getting those stimulations in to make the milk, and that's really important.
And it's a laxative. The other thing about colostrum is actually the whole idea is that it makes babies poo, and that's really important because it's protective. So once babies start pooing, they get rid of that meconium, that thick, sticky, gloopy stuff that they poo out, which, if it stays in the gut, increases the risk of the baby going on to becoming jaundiced. So having colostrum in those early days, no matter what volume, will get the poo moving, will get that meconium out of the baby and reduce the risk of the baby being jaundiced.
It also gets rid of all the yuck in the baby's tummy as well, which from the birth they often ingest as they're coming through the birth journey. They ingest some of the liquor and goop that's down there, and so they can be quite mucousy, and their tummy, which is tiny, tiny. We haven't done this for ages, Alex.
Not
We're
today.
going to get it in.
Not today.
So your baby's tummy is tiny, tiny, tiny. So it doesn't take much goop to make your baby feel full. And so often they don't wake up and feed because they have got a tummy full of goop. That's half a teaspoonful of goop, which is not very much when you think about how much waters you get when your waters have gone. You think it's lots and lots and lots, but actually that's tiny little bit. So if your baby's tummy is full of goop in the early days, they feel very full and they don't wake up and feel hungry. So just pushing them with little bits of express colostrum with a syringe is perfect, because it just makes them push the colostrum through like a laxative, as Alex said, to empty their tummies. And once they've got rid of that goop, which is often by about 48 hours, they start waking up and wanting to feed, and that's normally just as you're about to go out the door from the hospital. So it's if you haven't had a normal delivery, you've had a cesarean or something like that, then quite often your baby hasn't been through the birth path and been squashed in its chest to get rid of everything. They often get rid of all the goop in their nose and their mouth when they're coming through the birth process. They don't quite get the same squish and so their tummies are often much more full, and they've had some medication, so they often don't wake up and feed. So, understanding all of those things and the rationale for giving your baby frequent little bits of food, of colostrum, is really important. But also, if you are not giving breast milk, you're giving formula, think about that size when you're giving your baby its first bottle, that you don't need to give it, bottle full like that. If you look at the difference between those two and try and put one into the other, it doesn't make sense, does it? So think about volumes and building them up very slowly if you are giving bottles to your baby. Small amounts and build it up so that your baby's tummy can get used to it. They're often very, very sick if they have larger volumes than that in the early days. Their tummy's not meant to receive large volumes.
So Charlotte's come on now and again said, ladies, quick question, Alicia keeps going off her milk but I'm trying juice and she's drinking that on and off on her own, and water but not milk. Is that bad that she's gone off milk? But I think she's over a year now, isn't she? Which is not really so much of a problem, Charlotte. You could be introducing milk-based products, so things like the cubes of cheese or yogurts.
Fromifray, I think that one Fromifray is 25% of their milk, daily milk intake.
So anything like that will give her the calcium that she needs. And worth having a chat with your health visitor as well, Charlotte. But some babies do get to the point where they don't want milk, but finding other ways of giving her the calcium in her diet is important. Again, that's something that you could look up on First Steps Nutrition, because it talks about weaning in that, or introducing complementary foods, I should say.
And you could try her in a little cup. Maybe she'll drink it in a cup rather than in a bottle or a beaker. Perhaps she wants something a little bit more grown up, and she might accept it in a different cup. And try that.
Yeah. Now, Leanne, I haven't seen a question pop back up, but you've got my email address, and you can email and ask me directly if need be, rather than putting it on here if you want, because I'm really sorry but it hasn't come up. I have had a few problems today. I can see that some messages disappeared. Thankfully I'd read them and remembered what were in them, and I'm not sure what's going on with this today. It's always interesting, and Naomi's about to go on 2 weeks holiday soon as well. It's bound to do that when I'm on my own. Charlotte's come back and said thank you. Well, I think that's it for the moment.
We've done quite a lot. We've had over an hour, haven't we?
Yeah, we have done over an hour.
And thank you so much for all the questions. I know it's it's nice outside, so people are out and about, but we really appreciate you contributing to this session, because we get lots and lots and lots of positive feedback from this, from staff and mums, about how helpful they found it, and they pass on the information. So if you've got family and friends, tell them about it. They don't have to be in Oxfordshire to watch us, and they can be anywhere in the world actually to watch it, and you can watch it afterwards as well. So there's a YouTube channel on OMVP, the Oxfordshire Maternity Voices Partnership, that you can watch all of the ones if you really want, which we've done many of now.
Yeah, there will be
a lot of people.
Lots of repetition.
Yeah, there will be, but we might answer one of the questions that we haven't answered today. Certainly in the last month we probably will have touched on some of the things that we haven't touched on today that you might find that you want the information on. So have a scan through them and just see. Unfortunately, they're not put into orders and just infant feeding. So it's but if you do put YouTube Oxfordshire Infant Feeding Team, it does all come up with all our things that we've done. So have a little look and see if you can find anything to answer the questions if we haven't.
Right, so Charlotte's come back, says she's liking the beaker. Alicia likes the beaker now, so that's good. And Leanne said, I tried sending it a couple of times.
Isn't that weird?
But it's not urgent, so it can wait until next week. Okay, brilliant. That'll break the drought next week then, that'd be good.
I look forward to your first
Having
question.
said that, we're sitting here and Naomi's saying it's nice weather, and we're looking straight out across to the north of the county, because we're on level 7 now. And I can tell you now, it was absolutely pouring with rain a minute ago. So I'm not sure anybody over there was in the rain. So Leanne, you can start the questions next week. That would be lovely. All right.
Have a good week, everybody, and thank you so much for your contribution. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye from us.